My name is Detective Pierce. That is all you need to know. The rest I keep buried, like bones beneath soil too shallow to hold them. The case began with a letter. Not from the usual channels of law enforcement, or desperate clients who had no one else to turn to. This letter was written in a neat, deliberate hand on parchment that smelled faintly of mildew and dried leaves. The envelope bore no return address, only a pressed flower glued into the wax seal. Brittle black, its petals cracking like burned paper. The words were simple. Detective, something has taken root in the Arboretum. We cannot contain it. Please come before it blooms. No signature. Only a set of coordinates written below, out past the city, where few traveled anymore. The Withered Arboretum had once been a marvel. Built in the 19th century as a private collection, it was later opened to scholars, and then abandoned after funding collapsed. An enormous glass dome sat above acres of cultivated earth, filled with rare plants brought from every corner of the globe. Rumor said its benefactors had grown obsessed, importing not only flora but seeds found in ruins, spores scraped from stone, roots unearthed from graves older than any civilization. The place had been closed for years. Yet as I arrived in the dead of night, the glass dome glimmered faintly in the moonlight, its surface mottled with cracks and overgrowth. Vines sprawled across its ribs, strangling the ironwork. The air outside smelled thick, damp, like rain-soaked wood left too long to rot. I parked just beyond the gates, which leaned askew on rusted hinges. Beyond them, a path once paved with stone was nearly devoured by roots, knotted and pale as bone. The sound of insects was absent. No wind stirred the trees. Only silence. And beneath it, a faint pulse. At first, I thought it was the blood in my ears after the long drive. But the closer I came to the Arboretum's doors, the clearer it became, a slow, steady thrum, like the beating of a heart deep beneath the soil. The front doors groaned when I pushed them open. Their handles were cold as ice, damp with condensation. Inside, the air was warmer, cloying, thick with a sweetness that made me gag. Lanterns hung unlit along the entrance hall. I lit one with the matchbook I always carried. The flame trembled as though reluctant to burn, the shadows it cast writhing against the cracked glass walls. The interior stretched wide, the great dome marching overhead, though much of the glass was broken. Moonlight poured through jagged openings, painting the floor in sharp silver shards. What should have been orderly rows of botanical displays had transformed into something feral. Plants had escaped their cases and planters, sprawling wildly, climbing the iron ribs of the dome, bursting through shattered tiles. Yet most of the foliage was dead. Leaves hung brittle and brown, flowers shriveled into husks. The garden was withered indeed. And yet, something moved. Not wind. Not animal. The plants themselves. Vines twitched, roots curled, brittle stalks leaned as though straining toward me when I passed. Their branches were dry, but I heard the faint creak of living wood beneath bark. In the far corner, I found the reception desk. Dust lay thick across it, though a ledger rested open. Names filled its pages, the most recent dated less than a month ago. Visitors. Scholars. Researchers. All signed in? None signed out. I pressed deeper into the Arboretum. The lantern's flame licked nervously at the glass. Each hallway branched into smaller conservatories, one devoted to desert flora, its sand now blackened and cracked, another to aquatic plants, the tanks shattered, algae clinging like oil to the broken glass. Insects lay fossilized in dried mud, wings curled like paper. The smell grew worse. Not rot exactly, but something rich, cloying, too sweet, like flowers forced to bloom in darkness until they soured. I covered my mouth with a cloth, yet the stench clung to me, sinking into my throat. Then I heard it. whispering. At first faint, no more than the scrape of branches against glass. But the longer I listened, the more distinct it became, words half-formed, rustling in a language I did not know. The plants were speaking. Their roots shifted in the soil, leaves quivered though no breeze stirred. I tightened my grip on the lantern. And then I saw the first body. It lay slumped against a collapsed planter, its skin pale, lips dark. A man, perhaps in his 40s, his clothes marked with soil and torn fabric. His eyes were wide open, glassy, and from his mouth spilled a tangle of fine white roots, threading over his chest, burrowing into the ground. His fingers were clutching at them, frozen in desperation, but they had grown straight through his palms, pinning him to the earth. I crouched low, examining without touching. His veins bulged faintly beneath the skin, raised into ridges, as though something had grown beneath them. When I leaned closer, I heard it again. Whispering. Not from the plants this time. From him. The sound issued from his throat though his chest did not rise. A dry rasp, words shaped by lips that should no longer move. His eyes shifted toward me, only slightly, pupils contracting in the lantern light. Then the whisper became clear. It blooms! I staggered back. The roots within his mouth writhed, curling upward, reaching. I did not stay. I moved deeper, every step feeling heavier, as though the ground itself resisted me. The Arboretum stretched on far longer than its exterior suggested, its halls folding into one another like a maze. My lantern burned low. Shadows swayed with a pulse that matched the thrum beneath the soil. At last, I found a chamber larger than the rest. The central conservatory. Here, the dome rose highest, though most of its glass had shattered. Moonlight fell across a massive pit in the center, ringed by iron railings bent nearly flat. The soil within was black, damp, glistening as though freshly watered. And from its depths grew a tree. Or something like a tree. Its trunk was pale, almost human in color, ribbed with dark seams. Its branches twisted high, leafless, each tipped with brittle pods that pulsed faintly, as though filled with liquid. The roots spread outward across the soil, cracking tile, climbing walls, burrowing into the flesh of the Arboretum itself. And there were more bodies. Half a dozen, arranged around the pit. Some seated upright, their eyes wide, mouths overgrown with roots. Others collapsed in heaps, their bodies contorted. All were tethered to the central tree by veins of vine, their blood drained, their skin shriveled. The whispering was louder here. A chorus. Voices from the pods above, from the corpses, from the roots threading the ground. They murmured in unison, words I did not know, but which chilled me nonetheless. The lantern flickered. And in its dying light, the pods above began to split. I will stop here for now. That was the first night in the Withered Arboretum. And it was only the beginning. The pods split. Not all at once, but one after another, sharp cracks breaking the silence. Thin fissures ran down their sides, releasing a faint mist that drifted into the moonlight like smoke. A smell followed, sweet and foul at once, the odor of something both blooming and rotting. I stepped back, lantern trembling in my hand, but my boots struck something soft. Another body. I dared not look down. The whispering rose, a chorus swelling, voices rasping in my ears. Some were pleading, others praying. Some simply repeating the same word, over and over. Hunger! 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 The first pod tore open fully, peeling back like brittle flesh. From within hung not a seed nor a flower but a shape, humanoid, skeletal, its limbs thin as branches, its head bowed. Roots coiled around its form, lowering it gently as though in mockery of birth. When it touched the soil, it moved. Not like a newborn struggling to rise, but with dreadful purpose. its head lifted. Its face was not a face at all, but a smooth mask of bark where features should have been. Where eyes belong, two dark hollows wept sap. Its mouth was only a split across the wood, jagged, and yet it spoke with the same chorus of whispers that filled the hall. I raised my revolver. The lantern's flame wavered. Then a voice, not the chorus, not the whispers, but a human voice, rang out behind me. "Don't shoot it. You'll only feed it." I spun. At the far end of the chamber, a figure stood among the shadows. A woman, hair tangled, clothes torn and dirted, clutching a broken length of pipe like a weapon. Her eyes glimmered with fevered intensity, and yet there was clarity in them, a survivor's clarity. The thing from the pod lurched toward me. Its limbs cracked as it moved, joints bending too far. I fired once. The bullet struck its chest, splintering bark, but no blood spilled. Instead, roots writhed from the wound, pulling the fragments back together. The whispering swelled. The woman shouted again. "The roots drink lead like water. Burn it or run!" I chose the latter. We fled together through one of the side passages, my lantern casting frantic shadows along the broken glass walls. The chorus followed, not in footsteps but in the groan of shifting roots, the creak of wood stretching too fast to be natural. The woman guided me through twisting halls, past withered displays and shattered tanks. At last, she dragged open a rusted service door and shoved me inside. We collapsed together in darkness, our breath ragged, the sound of roots scraping beyond the door like fingernails. Only after long minutes of silence did she speak again. "You're not one of them." Her voice was hoarse, broken by exhaustion. "No," I said. "Detective Pierce." She gave a short, humorless laugh. "A detective? Of all the things to send into this hell. You wrote the letter?" She shook her head. "No. That wasn't me. I came here with the others, a research team. Botanists. Scholars. We were told the Arboretum had been purchased, reopened for study. But when we arrived, it wasn't study they wanted. It was worship." I narrowed my eyes. "Worship?" She nodded. "The Order of Roots, they called themselves. A cult. They believe the Arboretum isn't dying, it's changing. They planted something in the central pit years ago. Fed it. Sacrificed to it. They say it remembers every death it devours. That it can bring life eternal, if you surrender your flesh to its roots. And your team? Some joined them. Some resisted. The ones who resisted." She trailed off, her face pale. "The tree takes them. Turns them into husks, or worse, into those things that crawl from the pods. And you?" I ran. "I've been hiding ever since. Watching. Waiting for a way out." I studied her by the flicker of the lantern. Her hands were raw, nails broken, veins raised faintly beneath the skin. But her eyes were steady, determined. "What's your name?" I asked. "Clara," she said. "Clara Hensley." "Then, Clara, if you've been hiding, you've seen more than I have. Tell me what it is we're facing." She leaned back against the damp wall, her voice trembling but firm. "The tree is called the First Root. That's what the Order calls it. They believe it predates humanity. That its seeds were buried in the earth long before man learned fire. They found fragments of it in ruins across the world. Pieces. Shards. But here, they planted the whole seed. And it grew." Her eyes darkened. "It doesn't just feed on bodies. It feeds on names. Memories. That's why the whispering never stops. It's the voices of the taken. All of them, stored inside its bark." I felt the weight of her words settle like frost. "How many?" I asked quietly. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Silence stretched. Then Clara's face hardened. If you're here to help, you need to know, there's no solving this. There's only burning it down. If we let it keep growing, it won't stop here. The roots are already spreading beyond the Arboretum. Before I could reply, a sound rattled through the pipes above. A hollow thud, like something heavy dragging itself along metal. Clara tensed. They're searching for us. Not the creatures, I said. The cultists. She nodded. They walk among the husks. Feed them. Protect the tree. They've been changed. Not fully human anymore. If they find us. She stopped. A new sound cut her off. Voices. Not whispers. Shouts. Human shouts, echoing through the Arboretum halls. The words carried with a strange fervor. The roots shall rise. The bloom shall spread. Bring the vessel forward. Clara's face went white. They've chosen someone, she whispered. A vessel. That means the tree's ready to bloom. And if it does? I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The roots answered for her, shuddering through the walls, rattling glass, pulsing like veins. We crept through the service corridors, following pipes that dripped condensation. The lantern flickered low, and every shadow felt alive. Clara moved with practiced caution, pausing at corners, listening before motioning me forward. At last, we reached a grated overlook above the central conservatory. From here, we could see the tree more clearly. Its pods swayed, half open, dripping sap that glowed faintly. Below, the cultists knelt in a circle, their robes stitched with roots, their flesh marked with scars that pulsed faintly like veins beneath the bark. And in the center, bound in vines, was a man. Young, gaunt, his face streaked with tears. His clothes marked him as one of the researchers Clara must have come with. His lips moved, begging silently for help. The cult leader raised a hand, and the whispering ceased. Silence hung heavy. Then he spoke, his voice carrying with unnatural clarity. The root has chosen its bloom. Tonight the vessel will be consumed, and the garden will spread. The tree trembled. Pods split wider. The man screamed. Clara gripped my arm so tightly her nails bit my skin. We have to stop it. If the bloom takes hold, nothing will stop it. Not fire, not stone, not steel. It'll keep growing, swallowing everything. I stared down at the writhing roots, the glowing sap, the husks that shuffled among the cultists. My revolver felt like a toy in my hand. Yet the ledger I had seen, the bodies, the whispers, they all pointed to one truth. This arboretum wasn't just a garden. It was a graveyard that refused to stay buried. And if we didn't end it tonight, it would become the world's graveyard. That was when the cult leader's head snapped upward. His eyes, pale as milk, locked directly onto mine. And he smiled. The leader's gaze was a hook. Even through the iron grate, I felt his eyes burrow into me, cold and knowing. The smile that followed was slow, deliberate, like a man who had just found the missing piece to his puzzle. He raised his arms. The cult below stirred. Voices rose, layered and dissonant, an invocation that clawed at my ears. Beside me, Clara cursed under her breath. He saw us. Roots shifted along the walls, creeping upward toward the overlook. The grate beneath us groaned as if the tree itself had become aware of our weight. We need to move, I muttered. But it was already too late. The cult leader thrust a hand skyward, and the roots obeyed. They surged toward us, breaking through stone and glass alike. The grate shuddered. Clara pulled me back just as the floor split open, sending shards of rusted iron into the void below. I barely caught my lantern before it fell. Its light swung wildly as we stumbled into the corridor behind us. Roots lashed after us, slamming into walls, bursting pipes, spraying hot steam. "Left!" Clara shouted, leading the way. We sprinted through twisting passages, the Arboretum itself groaning around us. Behind us, footsteps, human, not husk. The cultists were coming. We crashed through another service door and found ourselves in a stairwell, its steps choked with moss and dripping vines. Clara didn't hesitate. She plunged downward, and I followed, lantern flickering in the damp air. The roots didn't just chase. They guided. The walls pulsed faintly with sap, veins glowing faintly, showing us the way it wanted us to go. Down. Always down. "Where are we going?" I asked between breaths. "The catacombs," Clara said. "The Arboretum was built over them. Old tunnels, older than the greenhouse itself. That's where the Order found the seed. And that's where they want us." "Yes," she said grimly. "But it's also the only place they don't control completely. The roots fear what lies deeper." Her words chilled me more than the air. At last, we burst into a cavernous chamber. The ceiling was low, dripping with stalactites, the walls lined with old stone carved in strange, weathered symbols. The lantern's light revealed bones scattered across the floor, brittle and ancient, gnawed by roots that had wrapped around them like greedy fingers. "This isn't just a catacomb," I whispered. "It's a tomb." Clara nodded. "The Order says the first root didn't just grow here, it was buried here, long before the Arboretum was built. This was once a crypt. A grave for something that should have stayed dead." The chanting above echoed faintly through the stone. The tree groaned, its roots reaching ever deeper. We moved carefully, stepping over bones. The silence here was heavier, thicker. The whispers that had plagued me above ground were muffled, as though smothered by the weight of centuries. For the first time since entering the Arboretum, I almost felt relief. Almost. The relief ended when I saw the altar. It stood in the center of the cavern, carved from dark stone, its surface stained black. Around it, a ring of broken chains lay scattered, their links fused with rust. And carved into the altar's base were words in a language I didn't recognize, angular, sharp, older than any script I had studied. Clara approached it with visible dread. "This is where they planted it," she whispered. "Where they first fed it." The lantern's flame bent strangely near the altar, as though the air itself warped. I felt a pressure in my skull, a dull ache that grew sharper the longer I stared. "We shouldn't be here," Clara said suddenly. "Not this close. It'll wake something worse." But before I could answer, another sound cut through the chamber. Footsteps. We spun. From the far end of the cavern, cultists emerged, their robes dragging across stone, their eyes glowing faintly with sap. At their head walked the leader, his pale gaze never leaving me. "You've walked into the root of all things," he said, his voice echoing unnaturally in the tomb. "Do you feel it, detective? The hunger? The weight of 1,000 voices buried beneath your feet?" He spread his arms. "This is no tomb. It is a womb." The roots writhed along the ceiling, dripping sap. Behind the cultists, husks shuffled forward, their bark flesh cracking with each step. Clara raised her pipe like a blade. I raised my revolver, though I knew its bullets were useless. The leader smiled again. "You were chosen, Pierce. The root called you here. Every step you've taken, every question you asked was guided. You are not the destroyer. You are the vessel." The altar shuddered. Cracks split its surface, light spilling from within. A sound like breath escaped, long, low, and hungry. The cultists dropped to their knees. The husks froze, heads bowed. And the voice came, not whispering, not human, but a resonance that shook the marrow of my bones. Pierce. The lantern flickered. My vision swam. For a moment, I saw not the tomb but a forest, endless and black, its trees stretching into eternity. Each trunk was a body, each branch a limb, and at the center of it all was a great tree that bled sap like blood. Its roots reached into me. I staggered. My revolver clattered to the stone. Clara caught my arm, shouting something I couldn't hear. My mind was drowning in the vision. The tree wanted me. It wanted my name, my memories, my life. And for a moment, I almost gave it. Clara's scream broke through. Pierce! Fight it! The world snapped back. The cavern returned. The altar pulsed, cracks widening, light spilling brighter. The cult leader's smile stretched unnaturally, his skin tearing at the corners of his mouth. I grabbed Clara's arm. We can't fight it here, I gasped. We need fire. We need something stronger. She hesitated. The husks were rising again, their hollow eyes fixed on us. The cultists advanced, chanting, their voices blending with the roar of the altar. I raised the lantern high. If it wants me, I said, then let it chase me. And I hurled the lantern to the ground. The oil splashed. Flame burst across the cavern floor, racing toward the cultists. Their robes ignited, screams rising as the husks flailed in the fire. The leader stood untouched, watching me with fury in his pale eyes. Run! I shouted. Clara didn't argue. Together we bolted through a side passage, the flames chasing us, the altar's roar shaking the stone around us. Roots thrashed, the arboretum above groaning in rage. We didn't stop until the passage collapsed behind us, sealing us in darkness lit only by the glow of the burning catacomb. For now, we had escaped. But the voice of the tree still echoed in my skull. Pierce. Vessel. Bloom. The passage collapsed behind us in a thunder of stone and ash. For a moment, silence, broken only by my ragged breath and Clara's trembling hand gripping my sleeve. The fire we'd left behind painted the tunnel walls with orange light until the last of it vanished, leaving us in blackness. My ears rang with the echo of the altar's roar. My skull still hummed with the voice that had called my name. I lit a match with shaking fingers. The flame flared, small and weak, but it was enough to see Clara's face, streaked with sweat and soot, eyes burning with determination. You heard it, didn't you? She asked. I didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. Then we have to move. Before it tries again. She led me through the dark, guided by memory. I trailed behind, revolver clutched in my hand though it felt useless as a child's toy. Every shadow seemed to bend toward me, every crack in the stone whispering my name. After what felt like hours, the tunnel widened into a chamber unlike the others. No bones here. No roots clawing through the stone. Instead, shelves, rotting wood heavy with stacks of paper, boxes of brittle documents, ledgers bound in cracked leather. An archive. The air smelled of dust and mildew, but it was dry, unnaturally so, as if the damp that plagued the Arboretum had been barred from entering. My match flickered out, and Clara quickly struck her own lantern, the flame steady in the stale air. This is it, she said. The Order's records. What they couldn't burn, they buried. They didn't want anyone to find this place. I ran my fingers across the books, their spines marked with faded symbols. Some were in English, others in languages I couldn't recognize. My hand stopped at a thick tome, its cover embossed with the outline of a tree. I opened it. The pages were brittle, ink faded but legible. The root requires vessels. It does not bloom without blood. The chosen are marked before birth, carried through generations, until the seed calls them home. My throat tightened. I turned the page. Names of the marked must be kept hidden, preserved in silence. To speak them aloud is to invite the root's attention. The page listed dozens of names, many crossed out. But one, near the bottom, burned against my eyes. Pierce. My hand froze. The letters seemed to crawl across the page, alive. Clara leaned in, reading over my shoulder, and swore under her breath. That's why it called you. You were written into this long before you ever stepped foot in the Arboretum. I wanted to deny it, to say the name was coincidence. But the voice in my head said otherwise. It was patient, certain. Vessel. Clara pulled another document from a shelf. It was a ledger of experiments, dates, numbers, descriptions of rituals performed within the Arboretum. They've tried this before, she whispered. Over and over. Each time they failed, the vessel resisted. But they kept planting, feeding, waiting. They think you'll be different. Because my name's in their book? I muttered. Because you're alive, she said. And standing here. And because the tree doesn't just want you. It needs you. Her words sank into me like ice. The air shifted. The lantern dimmed, shadows crawling higher across the shelves. A sound rose, low and steady. The creak of wood bending, the groan of roots pushing through stone. The Arboretum had found us again. Clara grabbed my hand. We can't stay here. We ran deeper into the archives, papers scattering beneath our boots. The shelves grew taller, warped, leaning inward as though listening. The sound of roots slithering along the walls followed us, always close. At last, the corridor ended at a heavy door of iron, its surface etched with strange sigils. Clara pressed her ear against it. Something's beyond this, she said. Something they sealed away. The roots hammered at the walls, closing in. I didn't think. I shoved the door with my shoulder. Rust cracked. Metal screamed. With one final push, it gave way. We stumbled inside. The room beyond was circular, its walls carved smooth, its ceiling lost in shadow. At the center stood a stone pedestal, upon which rested a glass container filled with dark sap. But it wasn't the container that froze me in place. It was the object suspended within the sap. A heart. It pulsed faintly, though no veins fed it, no body surrounded it. Each beat echoed in the chamber like a drum. Clara's face went pale. That's it. The first heart. The source of the root. They carved it out, preserved it, kept it alive. The heart pulsed faster, as though aware of our presence. And then, I felt it. The pull. Not like before, not whispers or visions. This was physical. My chest ached, ribs tightening, my own heart thrumming in painful rhythm with the one in the glass. The room spun. My knees buckled. Clara caught me. Pierce, don't look at it. Fight it. But my eyes wouldn't turn away. The heart's beat filled me, drowning out thought, drowning out fear. A voice rose again, deeper this time, not a whisper but a command. Return. My pulse matched it. My vision blurred. For a moment, I saw myself not in this chamber but hanging from the branches of the great tree, my veins pouring into its roots, my chest hollowed out as the first heart replaced my own. The vessel. Me. Clara's scream snapped me back. The glass had cracked. Sap leaked across the pedestal, hissing where it touched stone. The heart throbbed violently, shaking the chamber. She pulled me toward the door. We have to go! But the roots were already there, writhing through the cracks in the walls, slamming against the iron frame. The Arboretum would not let us leave. Clara's eyes darted around, desperate. Her gaze fixed on the lantern still in her hand. Pierce, she said, her voice trembling but steady. There's only one way to end this. Burn it. The thought clawed at me. To destroy the heart was to destroy the Arboretum. But the pull within me screamed otherwise. The root wanted it preserved. It wanted me bound to it. Clara pressed the lantern into my hand. Choose, she whispered. Now. The chamber shook violently. Roots burst through the walls. The glass container shattered. The heart fell to the floor, beating wildly, pumping sap across the stone like blood. I held the lantern high. The flame danced, fragile but final. The voice roared in my skull. Pierce. Vessel. Bloom. And for the first time since entering the Arboretum, I felt stronger than it. I hurled the lantern. The heart caught fire. The sap ignited with a scream that was not human. Flames surged upward, roots writhing and recoiling, the chamber filling with smoke and the stench of burning rot. Clara pulled me toward the door. Together we forced it open, stumbling into the corridor as the chamber collapsed behind us in fire and fury. For a moment I thought we'd won. But then, through the roar of flame, the voice came again, weaker, but alive. Pierce. Vessel. Not yet. The Arboretum wasn't dead. Not yet. And it would come for me again. The fire spread faster than breath. Sap ignited, roots shrieked, the entire Arboretum shuddering as if in agony. Clara and I stumbled through the archive halls, coughing, blinded by smoke. The shelves fell behind us, spilling centuries of paper into the fire. The Arboretum wasn't dying quietly. Every wall trembled. Roots slammed against stone, bursting through like spears, blocking corridors, driving us deeper rather than out. It wasn't just trying to stop us, it was guiding us, channeling us, hurting me. Toward the heart. Toward its will. But the first heart was burning. Flames roared behind us. The chamber where it lay was collapsing in on itself. I felt the Arboretum's pain inside my ribs, each pulse in my chest an echo of its death throes. And yet, my own heart didn't feel stronger. It felt weaker, as though I'd set fire to myself. We reached a staircase that wound upward. Clara grabbed my hand, pulling me along. The lantern was gone, but the fire behind us provided its own light, orange and black, dancing on the walls like demons. At the top of the stairs, the Arboretum changed. No longer archives. No longer chambers of roots and stone. A greenhouse. The glass roof above was shattered, shards glistening like ice, letting in a sliver of cold night. Moonlight cut across rows of withered plants, their vines twitching like dying animals. The air was thick with smoke and frost, a contradiction that burned my lungs with every breath. This way, Clara whispered, though her voice trembled. She didn't believe it either. Every path looked the same, rows of skeletal trees in pots, soil crawling with worms that had no flesh. I followed her, my revolver heavy and useless at my side. The Arboretum wasn't flesh and bone. It couldn't be shot. Couldn't be reasoned with. It was hunger given shape. And it wanted me. We reached the far end of the greenhouse. A pair of iron doors, rusted but intact, barred the way. Beyond them, I thought I saw a faint glow, a way out. Clara reached for the handles. They didn't move. Behind us, the plants stirred. Leaves of ash rattled, vines slithering along the soil, blossoms of rot opening to reveal pulsing mouths. The sound was low, rhythmic, almost like applause. "They're waking," Clara said. The doors wouldn't budge. She slammed her shoulder against them. Nothing. I pressed my palm to the iron. It was warm. Too warm. As though something on the other side was breathing. And then the voice came again, louder, clearer, filling the greenhouse. Pierce. Vessel. Bloom. The plants around us bent toward me, their skeletal stems bowing, their blossoms opening wider. They weren't attacking. They were waiting. Clara spun to face me, her eyes wide. "It's not done with you." The fire wasn't enough. I staggered back, clutching my chest. The Arboretum wasn't dying. It was burning, yes, but the root was pushing that fire into me. I felt it threading into my veins, turning my blood into sap. "Clara," I gasped. "It's inside me." She grabbed my shoulders, shaking me hard. "Then fight it. Don't let it finish what it started." But my body was no longer mine. My skin crawled. My pulse thundered. My eyes blurred, and through the haze I saw not a greenhouse but a forest of bone-white trees, endless, all rooted in me. I dropped to my knees. Clara screamed my name, but the Arboretum's voice drowned her out. "Return. Vessel. Bloom." Roots burst from the soil, wrapping around my wrists, my ankles, burrowing into my flesh. I didn't fight them. Couldn't. The Arboretum was inside me now, and the greenhouse was its cathedral. Clara tore at the roots with her hands, pulling, cutting with a shard of glass. Blood slicked her fingers, mine or hers I couldn't tell. The Arboretum roared in fury. The glass ceiling above shattered entirely, raining shards. Moonlight flooded the chamber. For a moment I saw both worlds, the burning archives collapsing below, and the eternal forest rising within me. And then something snapped. Not in me. In the Arboretum. The fire reached the greenhouse. Flames burst through the soil, devouring the rows of skeletal plants. The roots holding me shrieked, twisting in pain, releasing me as they burned. Clara dragged me to my feet, both of us stumbling toward the doors. I slammed my shoulder against them. Once, twice. On the third, the iron gave way. Cold night air hit my lungs like a blade. We staggered out into the garden grounds, collapsing onto frost-covered earth. Behind us, the Arboretum blazed. Flames leapt from shattered windows, roots writhing as they burned, the voice howling its fury into the night. "Vessel!" And then silence. The Arboretum crumbled inward, its roof collapsing, its glass shattering into sparks. What remained was ash. We lay there for hours, watching smoke curl into the stars. Clara didn't speak. Neither did I. When at last we rose, the frost had spread across the ground where the Arboretum once stood. The soil was dead, brittle, as though nothing could ever grow there again. But I felt it still. Not in the ground. In me. My pulse was wrong. Too heavy. Too slow. Each beat echoing with a rhythm not entirely mine. The Arboretum was gone. But the root had taken its seed with it. And I was carrying it. We walked back toward the world of men, the ruins of the Arboretum fading behind us in smoke and frost. Clara glanced at me once, her face pale, her lips parting as if to speak. But she didn't. She knew. I would never be free. And one day, sooner than either of us wished, the root would bloom again. Through me.